Yeah, thanks very much. And good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm actually in the US, so I'm just trying to figure out the time zone at the minute, but it is definitely good afternoon in the UK. So yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually born and bred in Hull as well, so it's quite a privilege and an honour to do something like this for the local area as well. It's not often these opportunities come up. So thank you for the team for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak to you all today. So we're going to be talking today about the importance of cloud and agile, and we're not going to talk from a technical perspective, but more how important it is to grow and develop your business when it comes to cloud and agile. So I work for an organisation called Insodo, and my role there, technically my job title is Principal Consultant, but that role is basically CTO advisory and C-level advisory. What that actually means is I spend my day with clients basically going to understanding their business, understanding where they are from a technology perspective, and then building a roadmap and working with them to be able to get to where they want to be. This can be either like enterprises or it can be organizations that know they need to do things to be able to move forward in this space and don't have the capability to do so. So as an organization, we can provide those services for them. Now, I'm going to try and keep it as non-technical as possible. I do have a couple of examples to talk about in this actually, which will really help set the pace of the conversation. But first of all, I want to just share a really quick quote from Winston Churchill, which is success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Now, I really like this one as someone that spent a lot of time around business and working with businesses and having businesses grow through things that I have helped them with or worked with them on. As all of you on the call will be able to attest to, as a business, you do go from failure to failure. And when you do get that success, it's because you've not lost enthusiasm for what you're doing and what you believe in and why your business is there. So I really like that quote from a long time ago, obviously, being from Winston Churchill, but it's obviously something that is still relevant today and will resonate with a lot of you I know. So it's just an important bit of context as we go forward, because when it comes to some of the latest technology out there and some of the latest ways of working with Agile, we try and grow this growth mindset, and this mindset really means that you can go from release to release of your business's software or release to release of your business's product, and you can fail along the way, and that is okay to fail, because with every failure you also learn a lot about the people you work with, your target market, your business in general, and the product you are creating or the software you are creating, and all of the things that are periphery around there. So it's really important, I think, to keep that in mind, and especially as a small, medium business, take that to heart as you go through building up your business to great things. So first of all, I just want to talk a little bit about Agile. So first of all, what exactly is Agile? So even though you may have heard of or worked in what we would call Agile Methodologies for some time, it's actually formally launched around 2001 with the Agile Manifesto. And you can go off and read the Agile Manifesto, agilemanifesto.org. Fundamentally, it is based on 4 major principles, but actually the Agile Manifesto come around from a group of people who traveled away to a retreat in the mountains for a period of time in a log cabin. And they got together, they were software engineers, and they got together and discussed what was happening to the software engineering industry. And they come out with a number of things in the Agile Manifesto, but they are all based on 4 major principles, which you can see up there now. So those are having individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Now that's important as we go into some of the examples of where this has worked for businesses, and actually one business that I get to work with a lot in my day-to-day work stands out a lot for that, and I'll tell you a bit about their story a little later on. Having working software over comprehensive documentation. Now that's not to say that documentation isn't important, it clearly is important, but it is more important to have software that works, software that does what you say it will do, or taking the software context out of the conversation, having a working product over comprehensive documentation of that product, because it is your product that sells and gets you customers, and it is that product working that means that your customers keep coming back and you get more customers. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I really like this one. A lot of the work I do is around making sure that you collaborate with each other and your customers. Now, even if you're an internal IT department or you're an internal function within a business, you have customers. If you work within HR within an organization, your customers are the employees within that business. They are your customers. So making sure you have the ability to collaborate with them is really fundamental to having an open and transparent working relationship. The ability to respond to change over following a plan as well. I think in business, this is really critical. Again, this doesn't mean don't have a plan. We obviously need to have plans for a number of things in business, but fundamentally, this means when the business conditions change or the environment changes, that means our business needs to be changed. We have to be able to respond to that change effectively to be able to continue as a business and continue successfully as a business, rather than sticking to a plan in a rigid fashion. Those are things that will ultimately make your product and your business fail over time. And ultimately, no one wants to be in a position where their business is failing. So Agile primarily consists of 6 steps. So the first one is around collecting requirements. So this is where we work with our customers to be able to collect the requirements for what they want us to do. This is where collaboration works really, really well. And collaboration with customers is one of the founding principles of Agile, as we've just talked about. Why it's really, really important is that the earlier you capture requirements, the earlier those requirements can influence the product. If you think of the wheel that's here, at any point you could get new requirements along these 6 steps. But the only real place that requirements can make a real difference and be designed, developed, tested, and deployed properly is at the beginning. If you get requirements partway through development of your product, this can have a detrimental effect to any testing that's done and any deployment that's done. Now, one of the things that I showed this graphic to a group of other people a few weeks ago, and they said it doesn't really attest to business, it really talks about software, but actually, yes, that they are very software heavy when it comes to Agile, and the terminology is aimed at software, but actually it applies to any business. You capture requirements for your product, you design a product, you develop that product, you test that product with a small group of people, you then deploy that product or release that product to a wider group of people, and then you review your product, and then you go back to requirements. You take all of that information that you have learned from the initial release of your product, and you look again at the requirements. You take new requirements, you look at existing requirements and how they can be improved, and then the cycle starts again. You design, develop, test, deploy, and review. That is really what Agile is about. And Agile, as the name suggests, is around being able to pivot around different business decisions at different times to be able to say when we need to do various things in line with what the industry is telling us to do. Now, in my, I consider the position I'm in quite a privilege to work with lots of different businesses. and no more so than during the current pandemic. And some of the clients I've worked with are doing okay throughout the pandemic. Some of them not so well at all, and others are accelerating. And a few weeks ago, when I was starting to do the slides for this session and try and plan out some of the things that I was going to talk about, I started to look at those organizations in a bit more detail and try and find out if there was a correlation between the ones that were performing well, the ones that were not performing well, and sadly the small number that have failed. So first of all, I looked at what they do as an organization. I looked at their product, and actually across the board, there was a very big mix of products within the range of data that I was looking at. I couldn't say everyone who did something specific in A had succeeded, everything in B had done okay, and everyone in C had failed. There was actually a spectrum of all of those across the stack. So then I started to look at other things. Did location play a factor? Did their target market make a difference? And I kept drawing up blanks until I decided to look at how they work internally within those organizations. And the one thing that came up for all of those organizations that had exceeded expectations, even in some markets where the odds were hugely stacked against them, is they all delivered their products in an agile fashion. They all looked at the requirements for the specific point in time. The environment of their business changed massively, as it did for all of us personally, not just in business. And they looked at the design of their product. They made some development changes to that product. They tested it on a small group of people. They then deployed it to the wider audience, and they reviewed what happened, and they went round again, and they keep doing this in cycles. In software engineering, we would do this every 2 weeks generally, and that's what we call a sprint or an iteration. More widely in business, you might do this over a monthly period, every 2 months or every quarter. One of the businesses that has outstripped its expectations by a long, long way is in a business where we know lots of people struggling, and that's aviation. One of the businesses that I looked at was Delta Airlines. They're obviously a pretty large company. One of the reasons I decided to look at it in a bit more detail, I used to work for Virgin Atlantic, and due to the start of the pandemic, moved roles. Now, Delta's a fascinating company to look at. So they own 49% of Virgin Atlantic. So I knew a little bit about how they worked. I knew lots of people that worked there. Now, Delta, much like the Virgin Atlantic brand in general, has a very loyal base of staff and customers. But one of the things that stood out for me in terms of what Delta were doing is they made various commitments quite early on in the pandemic to how they would change flying, not just during the pandemic, but after that as well. Airlines are generally not known for their ability to change tickets or cancel flights even without penalty. Delta started to change this by making all seat changes and all reservation changes completely free. They abolished all charges related to it. That's quite a big move for an industry that is generally known for charging for those sorts of things to happen. They also made changes to the configuration of planes, the number of passengers, the planes that were flying specific routes to make them more fuel efficient. Like most airlines, any 747 jumbo jets completely went from the fleet to save money. And like most airlines, moved to a predominantly 2-engine fleet. Now, all of those changes, if you think about them, they were all brought upon by the pandemic. There were things that would potentially happen in the future, but some of those things, like the seat changes, you think unless they were forced to do that, they generally wouldn't have done that. Now, that is when you start to look at things like Agile, when they looked at the conditions that they were trading in and realized how difficult it was going to be, not just now, but in the future. They made some changes in an Agile way without waiting for planning cycles to happen, board meetings to happen. They made calls that would change the path of that business for the better. Now, I'm personally not flying anywhere at the minute, although you can take domestic flights still in the United States. But I know plenty of people that do, and even when it comes down to cleanliness of the planes, the flexibility options, the way the seating is arranged in Delta terminals throughout US airports, all I hear is one thing, that they have gone above and beyond and changed the way they work to make their business work in the environment that they're currently working in. And if you think about any business, that is fundamentally how you start business. You find gaps in the market, you find a product that addresses that gap, you take the requirements, you design it, develop it, test it, deploy it to the masses, review, and then come back and continue going in that cycle. That is what Delta have done, and that is why they are still successful, even in the middle of a pandemic that restricts the movements of so many people across the world. So there's just a little story as to why Agile is so important, in my opinion, within your businesses. And this is regardless of scale, right? We're obviously talking specifically about SMEs, but the same rules actually apply everywhere throughout business. So what exactly are the benefits of Agile working? So there are lots of technical benefits when we talk about Agile and cloud, which makes a thing called DevOps. We also like to call it in the industry DevOps. But what are the business benefits of working like this? Not the technical benefits, what are the business benefits? So there's 5 things here that will hopefully speak to everyone as a business owner. So that's more control, better productivity, better quality, higher customer satisfaction, and a better return on investment. So let's just go through these in a little bit more detail and explain what we mean. So step 1, more control. What does it mean to have more control in a business? More control over your costs, more control over the environment that you are presented with to build your business within. Step 2, better productivity. This is your people, your staff being able to almost produce more with less or more with the same. And that is what Agile can do. Same with step 3. Step 3 is around quality. In the software world, we measure quality by the number of defects within our software that we have to fix, and the amount of technical debt that we accumulate over a period of time. And technical debt is directly related to quality. They are things that do not stop the product from working, but they are things that if we fix will improve the quality of those products. Because we are taking steady 2-week increments in the software world to be able to look back at what we've done, what worked well, what did not work well, and how will it work better in the future, we're able to constantly assess and look back on the things that we are doing to be able to make better quality products. Tying into that, because we are working in a more collaborative way with our peers, we are communicating better, we're being more transparent, we're also more productive as well. Excuse me. Now, on to step 4, higher customer satisfaction. When you release products that are better quality, when you release the features within those products more quickly and quicker than your competitors, you get higher customer satisfaction. Once more, on to step 5, you get a better return on investment as well. It's not as long until you realize the benefits of what you've pumped into that product in the first place. It can also make you realize mistakes early on as well, and change some of those mistakes as you go through the development process of any product in business. And being able to detect those early on and being able to fix some of those things before you release that product and consumers lose confidence is obviously gold dust for any organization in the world. So there's 5 really specific things, but broad things in terms of business success, which makes Agile really beneficial for organizations that go off and will go and implement Agile. Now, let's move on to the second aspect of this conversation, What is cloud computing? So I can pretty much guarantee today that everyone watching this or catching up with this afterwards will use some form of cloud-based technology, whether that be email, whether that be storage, such as Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive, anything like that. They are all what we would call public cloud products that are being consumed. They are accessible anywhere in the world, securely using your login and other methods to secure your identity, but they are accessible anywhere in the world. There is no reliance on a private network that you need to access. There is no reliance on periphery systems. They're all managed by another party, i.e. the vendors of the software. Now, cloud computing actually covers a huge number of things, as you can see on the screen. We cover infrastructure through servers, storage of files, regardless of what those files are, mobile applications, regular desktop and web-based applications, and also databases for the storage of structured data as well. And cloud computing can come in three forms. Most organizations have their own private network that they will run some of their systems on and access things via the internet. If you have a large enterprise, usually where they can consume the cost of running a private cloud, that means that we get the benefits of cloud technology within our own organization without having to access public resources. Now, hybrid cloud is a mix of private and public. It is where we have our own data center with our own equipment inside there, but we also utilize the power of public cloud as well for some of the services that we offer our customers. And that is what we would call hybrid cloud. So what are the benefits of cloud computing? So there's quite a lot, but these are some of the ones which I think are key, and these are some of the ones that I talk to customers about all the time. And they're in no particular. Is a big thing in business. If you think what we just talked about around Agile, having a platform to build your services upon or your business upon that is flexible and able to change as you change your product and change your demands is a huge benefit. Otherwise, that means that you have a large overhead in costs. Being able to have a platform that provides that level of flexibility means that you don't need to be scared or you don't need to be worried about changing how you operate as a business throughout the life cycle of your product, your engineering processes, or your business as a whole, because that platform is able to scale up or down based on the demands you need. Just skipping across a little bit into pay as you go. One of the reasons that when I speak to clients about cloud computing and cloud technologies, the number one reason that I hear from most clients that I speak to is around costs. The management of traditional data centers and traditional IT equipment is a CapEx cost. You can move those costs into being more OpEx costs when you go to a cloud computing model, because you pay for those services every single month. Whatever you use in that billing period is what you pay at the end of that period. You don't need to think in 1, 2, or 3 years' time, how much am I going to have in this environment? How much do I need to pay up front? Am I going to get value for money? Because you pay monthly and you pay as you go, you don't need to worry about that capital outlay up front. That means that you can put more effort and more money into the development of your product, because you can be a lot leaner on the platform side that helps support your underlying product, regardless of what that product is. Moving to the second point in there, just going back in some order, BCDR, so it stands for Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery. So BCDR is the term that every architect, every engineer within any technology organization always plans for, but they hope will never happen. This is having a scenario or an event where you need to move all of your resources to a disaster recovery location or invoke a business continuity plan because the worst has happened to your business. That could be flooding of your premises, it could be fire, it could be theft, it could be a natural event. It could also be something like terrorism as well, and anything that disrupts the natural flow of your business sufficiently that you have to readjust and realign how you work. So with cloud computing, a lot of clients that I speak to, especially the larger organizations and some small organizations as well, will use public cloud locations as BCDR locations. Now, what that means is that you are able to store services in standby mode effectively for if that worst does happen. And then when you tell those services to load up and be available, they're ultimately there. Data, privacy, identity, security, everything. That can be a lot cheaper than maintaining a secondary location constantly, because running data centers is very expensive. Co-locating your services within other people's data centers can also be expensive as well. So BCDR is one of the choices that are up there for clients that I speak to when it comes to consuming cloud computing technology. Next is collaboration. So being able to collaborate, we've talked about collaboration a little bit already when it comes to Agile, but cloud computing gives you the ability to collaborate on platforms. It gives you the ability to deploy services without having the complex underlying infrastructure and management systems that traditional networks are used to. That breeds a better level of collaboration between the teams that are working on those tools, because there doesn't need to be as much consideration for what is stored under the covers. Next is control. This sort of goes hand in hand with security as well, is the ability to apply different levels of policy for any number of thousands of settings that are available. It gives you the comfort that your data is stored in a safe place that is well managed and well controlled. You have control over the costs with the pay-as-you-go model. You have control over the security of that platform, who can deploy to it, who cannot deploy to it, who has access to it and who does not have access to it, as well as many other control surfaces. And every public cloud provider now is also aligned to major certification programs. For instance, PCI DSS, if you process credit card data, ISO 27001 from an information security perspective, and also regulatory standards for different government bodies and various different levels of regulatory compliance as well. For example, in the United States, we have something called HIPAA, which is the protection of healthcare data. And there's quite stringent methods and controls laid out in there for how you process someone's personal health data. Platforms are compliant with those controls that are set out. Same in the UK, government data is stored in what's known as IL secured locations, and they define physical security properties of those locations. Public cloud providers, especially Microsoft, have IL3 or IL4 certified data centers to store your data in. So this is a real advantage for workloads within government as well, because they are approved to be able to put the data within those workloads. Next one is location as well. So gone are the days where your data center may have been hundreds of miles away from where you operate, and the connectivity speed to those locations was obviously generally poor as well in years gone by. Now data centers are all over the place, and cloud providers have data centers in numerous locations with incredibly high speed private links between them to provide really good quality, fast access to those locations. And best of all as well, if you're a small, medium business, you don't always have staff to be able to deal with the things that come up during the day-to-day management of your IT operations. It might be something that you outsource as a business as well. With cloud platforms and cloud computing models, all of those updates happen automatically. You no longer need to take care of updating those platforms whenever an update is released. That will be done automatically for you, which enhances your security, keeps you in control at the same time. So let's just have a look at pulling some of these things together. So some of the benefits of cloud and Agile together. So let's start at the top where we talk about business drivers. So the ability to accelerate innovation is one of the things that I hear time and time again from pretty much every client I ever speak to. They want to be able to increase the collaboration between business and IT. They want to be able to release really frequently, and they want to automate some of the processes that take place within that business to make it as frictionless as possible. Sometimes it's what we call frictionless business. Add into that through Agile, the increased way we can output through automation, through what we call continuous deployment, which is being able to take a product and through automation, be able to deploy that time and time again, sometimes tens or hundreds of times a day, is really, really critical when it comes to tying all of these things together. Add into that the ability to monitor and manage these environments from anywhere, and using the latest state-of-the-art tools means that we can increase our throughput also as well. We're spending less time managing the platforms and the tools that we are using and more time building upon them and using them effectively. Now we come to what we call DevOps. Now there's a little tiny bit on DevOps in a little bit. It's a technical best practice for having development teams and operations teams, hence the name. DevOps work in a more collaborative and communicative way together. The benefits of DevOps are around boosting the efficiency of how those teams work through the availability of any infrastructure, the ability to have resiliency and scaling built into those pieces of infrastructure as well, and run them in the most cost-effective way as possible. With cloud computing, the times of buying services that you do not consume and still paying for them at the end of service is gone with cloud computing. This gives you the ability to run in an extremely cost-effective way. That obviously for any business has some really big benefits when it comes to what you spend on your technology requirements. And then some of the other benefits of the cloud that we've not talked about so far is around experimentation. I work with lots of companies that use some of the latest cutting edge cloud technology, things such as Internet of Things, where we have smart devices connected to the internet to be able to do the fast prototyping of their products. They're able to run market trials rather, of what they've built and what they've prototyped. And then one of the great things is you can take what you've done, improve it and make it production ready. That's what we call fast follow-on. That's the ability to take it from development to release very, very quickly. And all of those things together are things that really make a difference to a lot of businesses. So you can do each of these things individually and really well, but the message here is the more you do these things collectively and do these things together, the more benefit there will be for your business. Now, as I move on, I just want to talk about Microsoft's journey to Agile. So I'm lucky enough to work with Microsoft on a day-to-day basis. My technical background is in Microsoft's cloud platform, and I've been around Microsoft technology in various different ways most of my working life and most of my adult life as well, actually. So there's a really good story around how Microsoft works and how Microsoft changed because they had to. So I want to start with a quote. So Donovan Brown is Microsoft's principal DevOps engineer. So he come up with this phrase, which is what Microsoft adopted. That is, DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. One of the reasons I love this quote is, well, so first of all, Donovan took around a month to come up with this and used carefully chosen words. The other thing as well is that we don't talk about technology. We don't talk about a number of different things in here. But one of the things that we do talk about is continuous delivery of value. We talk about process, we talk about people, and we talk about products, not software. But most of all, value end users. This can be applied to any business that produces any product, regardless of what it is. Because we are saying that when we bring people, process and products together, we can continuously deliver value, whatever value that might be based on the product, to our end users. And that is something that has driven Microsoft for a number of years now into making several changes to how they operate. So when you start to bring Agile and cloud together into this thing that we call DevOps, there's a number of things that happen. In the remote working world, especially in a pandemic, business is in reality now moving very, very fast. And the reality is that unless you adopt an Agile mindset, your competitors are thinking about or are already doing this Agile level thinking, and that is giving them a competitive edge. That competitive edge ultimately means that, unfortunately, at some point you will be out innovated, and no one wants to be left behind in that position, because ultimately when you are out innovated, eventually that means that you become irrelevant in the market and you are put out of business. Now, this exactly describes Microsoft between 2000 and 2010. And actually from 2010 to 2012, Microsoft went through a huge number of changes to make them how they are today, which is a much better, much leaner and much different organization to what they were past then. One of the key messages that we can take from this is, if it hurts, do it more often. As a business owner, you need to find what hurts within your organization, within your processes, and keep doing it that little bit better. The example we can take from Microsoft is doing deployments. So everyone will remember Microsoft used to release editions of the Windows operating system that we have on our laptops and desktops every 1 to 2 years. What would happen is engineers would work on a feature and they would commit that code that they'd written back into a central repository, and they avoided deployment. Why did they avoid deployment? They knew that things would break if they did deployments. So they kept waiting and waiting until it got to a point where, instead of having a block of, say, 30 lines of code to test, integrate and release, they got to a point where they were doing tens and hundreds of thousands of changes and releasing them at one point in time. And what happened? Things broke. Deployments made things break. The key message behind this, really, to start with, is keep pushing small changes out and out until you get to a year, 2 years time from they were originally done. There are now some pretty significant major changes within your product. And because you've queued them all up for so long, you are now doing a huge amount of work to make sure that that product works as it was intended. Because sometimes when we work on a feature or fix a bug within software, something else might break or not work as we intended. So the key thing is, if it hurts, do it more often. So that's exactly what Microsoft started to do. They started to do deployments so often until they become actual experts. And one of the things that I really like here is beginners practice until they get it right. Experts practice until they can't get it wrong. Microsoft are now in a position where they do releases every single day, tens of thousands of releases on all of their products every single day. There is no longer a long anticipated release date for something that they're working on. It just happens and you are delivered them via updates. So keep doing what hurts until you're so good that it doesn't hurt anymore. And this is where DevOps comes in. And you can broadly describe DevOps as the coordination of development, delivery, and operations. And that's the ability to develop in a collaborative way with the rest of your peers. It's being able to deliver that in a seamless way that doesn't affect your existing product and service. And then being able to monitor that in a way that means you can find out when things go wrong and you can fix them very quickly. That may be rolling back that update and finding out what went wrong later, but it's having that ability to know what has changed, because the changes are so small that you can go back and make discrete changes at any single point in time. So this diagram's a little bit of a joke, but it does have a serious Messaging. So there's some models in here of how some of the biggest organizations in the world have worked, but the message is pretty clear. If you look at Microsoft's, they worked in silos and they were very competitive. They always wanted to do things better than the other team and do things better than everyone else. And this ultimately, while they thought this was the right way to go, this was ultimately the wrong way to do things. There was such a focus on tools at Microsoft, and all of these teams used all of those different tools. None of it was coordinated, that created competition and disparity between how they operated. That meant that a product could not work with another product, or things that were developed from an operations perspective in one product could not be mirrored in another product because they all used different tools. Now, one of the key things, just before recapping some of this, is quite simple, really. When it comes to technology and the way you work as a business and the way you have technology interact with your business, it's not really about the tools. It never has been about the tools, and it never will be about the tools. Key thing is, it's about the people, and it's also about the processes and the foundation that both of those are built upon. When I'm working with clients, I always talk about the correct way to do things when it comes to implementing Agile within their organization. And that starts with culture. What we mean by culture is the ability to communicate and collaborate more effectively with each other. Once we get that right, we can then determine the skills we need and the people that we need to operate within our business. Those people can then drive process, and they can get the processes you need to operate as a business right. Finally, the icing on the cake is being able to add technology to the mix to make those things easier to do, to be able to automate some of those processes and to be able to make it easier. That is where technology comes in. So don't start with technology. Technology is the last thing to do. Okay, excuse me. So let's just have a quick recap on some of the business benefits of why we want to do this within our organization. So the first thing is faster delivery. When you have competition in business, you want to be able to take your ideas and get them to market as quick as possible before your competitors. That is what keeps you ahead. That is what keeps your brand strong. And it is what keeps customers coming back to you time and time again. The ability to collaborate between people is also one of the huge business benefits of this. Being able to make things better by making sure people are speaking to each other and communicating in an effective way. Customer satisfaction is also a key thing. It's okay releasing products that people don't like, but they won't come back. Nor will your product have a good word on the street that is something that is reliable and safe to use. So customer satisfaction is really key. If you are able to continually deliver innovation that is of high quality and is ahead of your competitors, then customer satisfaction increases. Early detection of defects. Okay, so every product can have a defect. It doesn't have to be software, but every product can have a defect, which means it can work or not work as intended. So having the ability to detect those defects early really gives you the ability as a business to fix those defects and make it better in the future. Fixing those defects before they make it into production or into your release to your customers is really important, because if you can fix that defect, you've potentially negated a situation where your customer satisfaction decreases. And then finally, having that ability to not think about today, not think about the operations of the underlying technology platform, because it's reliable, because it does what you expect it to, because the amount of availability on that system is high, because you are not constantly firefighting, means that you can think about tomorrow, and all of your business can think about tomorrow as well. And that is exactly what an innovative mindset is. So key takeaways. So when we put together Agile working methodologies and cloud technology, that is what we call DevOps. DevOps is one of these things that if you have a quick search on the internet for DevOps, you will find reams of information about how it works, how different people operate, and how exactly you can go about doing this within your organization. Key thing is that it's a framework and it is not a one-size-fits-all approach. All of these things are things that have ideas and ways in which things work, but those ideas can be adopted to your specific scenario. And that is the best way that you will get is to work within your business. If you try and change your business to match a model, that can generally have quite bad results. So try and make sure that you do it the other way around. Try and make the framework work for you. Don't make disruptive changes to your business just to fit with a framework, because that framework might not be right for your organization. No one knows your business better than you do. So make the changes you need to the framework to enable you to work better and more innovative. And finally, certainly from experience and the number of organizations I work with, there are now huge numbers of companies around the world practicing this methodology. So it's really, really important to make sure that you take a look at the things that we've discussed. If you're not doing any of these already, look at what you want to do as a business, regardless of how big or small you are, and look at how these things can help you grow as a business. So with that, I just want to hand back, and if there's any questions, obviously happy to answer those, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Martin. I can open up for questions now. I can run through the remaining of the slides for the Digital Catalyst based in the Humber region. Has anybody got any questions? Happy to unmute you all, or I can let you just unmute as you go through. No questions coming through that I know of. Martin, I'll just have to ask you to manoeuvre through the slides for me, because you have rather than me. So in terms of the next ITC webinars, as I said, they're all listed there. Hopefully you'll find some of benefit to you, if not all, hopefully. And the next one, please. You will be able to find these slides. They will be emailed to you after the event. I think most of you know about the Digital Catalyst, just judging by some names. So this is what the support can do to support you. It's one-to-one support, coming in to work with your business to understand where you're at in the different levels of tech adoption, reviewing your processes and procedures, and then analysing where the gaps are, and leading to hopefully some definition and some implementation of what's actually needs to happen, or what you feel needs to happen in your business. And moving on to the next one, there is a little bit too many of these, Martin, so I'm happy if you want to slip past that one. I've covered that one off really. We do the one-to-one support with the digital maturity assessment, and we identify your where you need to go, or we support you to look at where you need to go, and understanding how that has a knock-on effect to the rest of the business. I do know most of you will have seen these slides a few times, because there's a few regulars on here, and so I'll not go through every point with you. Moving on to the next one, and we'll move swiftly on to the next one, Martin, if that's okay.
Yep.
So as I say, in a nutshell, one-to-one support, at the moment obviously delivered via these type of situations, via Zoom, via Teams, to help you to support. In the normal world, or whatever we get back to being normal, it would be face-to-face, coming in and working with you on site with your business. And moving on. And that just gives you the outcomes. I'm sure you probably realise this, even with just the slight changes that's been going on this year, with very quick implementation of digital tech in terms of whether you have an e-commerce site or whether you've had to rush into that and it needs a little bit more time. You'll have seen the benefits of that. Just even as simple as keeping the business afloat, really, if that's where you've gone to for digital tech adoption in this unknown world. And the next one, our contact details here. Please feel free to make contact. If you're based in the Humber area, we can support you to help your business grow and develop in the digital tech world. I think there might be one more. That's it. So that's where we're at now. I am still happy to unmute. Oh, what I actually need to do, if there's any more questions, I just need to launch the poll, and I'd like just you to take 5 minutes just to complete the poll, and that just gives us an idea of whether we're hitting the right information for the businesses, whether we need to look at other areas of support, and whether we're hitting the right timeframes and time length and input. So really would welcome your feedback on that. And as I say, I'm sure Martin would be more than happy to take any questions that any of you may have.
Yep.
So I'll just leave the poll open for a few minutes. Obviously that went well, Martin. We're not hearing any or seeing anything coming in the chat. You must have given them all the information. So what time is it in America?
It is currently, well, where I am, it's coming to 8 AM.
All right. An early start for you then.
To be honest, well, people generally start work quite early here anyway. Anyway. We're not in the office at the minute anyway, but a lot of people will certainly be in the office by 7 o'clock. It's not unusual to be far from the first person in about 8:30. It's very different to the UK, oddly.
Yeah. Oh well, I can go with that because I'm an early starter.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the poll, well, most of the poll back in, so I'd just like to thank you for your attendance today. As I say, there is questions if you want to, and you will receive a copy of the presentation in any case. And do please come on board the programme, particularly if you're in the Humber area. So Martin, I'd just like to say thank you to you.
Yeah, no problem, thank you.